Welcome to my channel. Try to hear the latest story.
I'm Brant, 28 years old, with a successful accounting career I built from scratch. My family always seemed picture perfect, celebrating every milestone together in our sprawling suburban home. That's why I never expected those cold words at our regular Sunday dinner. "Leave the key and don't come back," my father said, his voice devoid of emotion. My mother just stared, nodding in agreement while my sister handed me a suitcase that was already packed. Before I continue this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit that like and subscribe button to follow my journey from family outcast to the unexpected call that turned everything upside down. Growing up as the middle child in the Anderson family meant living in a world of carefully constructed appearances. From the outside, we were the embodiment of the American dream. Our large colonial home in the prestigious Oakwood neighborhood, the matching outfits for family photos, the lavish holiday parties that neighbors talked about for months afterward. But behind closed doors, the reality was much different. My father, Richard, built his reputation as one of the most successful real estate developers in the state. He had that magnetic charm in public, the firm handshake, the booming laugh that made everyone feel like they were his closest friend. But at home, that warmth disappeared. He was calculating, cold, and impossibly demanding. Nothing was ever good enough, especially when it came to me. The Anderson name stands for excellence, Brant, he would say at least once a week during dinner. Mediocrity is for other families. My mother, Eleanor, was the perfect complement to him. A former beauty queen turned socialite, she orchestrated our family image with meticulous precision. Every detail of our lives was curated for maximum social impact. Our accomplishments weren't celebrated for their own merit, but for how they reflected on the family brand. Smile for the Robertsons, Brant. She would whisper through clenched teeth at social gatherings. They just lost that big contract to your father. My older sister Madison was always the golden child. 3 years my senior and completely devoted to our father's vision for the family. She followed him into the real estate business straight out of college, skipping graduate school because he deemed it unnecessary. Her loyalty was rewarded with prime projects and public praise. While I got criticism, Madison received guidance. While I was questioned, she was trusted. Then there was my younger brother Tyler, 5 years younger than me, and thoroughly spoiled by our mother. He could do no wrong in her eyes. His mediocre grades were him finding his own path. His reckless behavior was youthful spirit. His entitlement was encouraged rather than corrected. And there was me in the middle, the peacekeeper, the mediator, the one who tried to smooth things over when Dad's temper flared or Mom's cutting remarks went too far. I learned early to anticipate needs, to read the room, to step in before situations escalated. It was exhausting, but it became my role in the family ecosystem. Perhaps that's why I chose accounting. The predictability of numbers, the clear rules, the satisfaction of balancing a complex equation. It was everything my family life wasn't. When I announced my major in college, my father's disappointment was palpable. "Accountants work for people like us, Brant. They don't become people like us," he said over Thanksgiving dinner my sophomore year. "The Anderson business is waiting for you. Always has been." But I stood firm in my decision. One of the few times I ever directly contradicted him. I graduated with honors and secured a position at Harrington and Associates, one of the most prestigious firms in the city. I worked my way up methodically, earning respect through competence rather than intimidation. 3 weeks before that fateful Sunday dinner, I received news of a major promotion. Senior manager with my own team and client portfolio. It should have been a cause for celebration. In most families, it would have been. I called home, hoping that even if they didn't understand my career path, they might acknowledge my success. "That's nice, dear," my mother said distractedly. "We'll talk about it on Sunday. Your father is on an important call." In the days leading up to the dinner, I noticed unusual patterns in my family's behavior. Hushed conversations that stopped when I entered rooms. Strange looks exchanged between Madison and my parents. Tyler avoiding eye contact entirely. Even their phone calls became shorter, more formal. I chalked it up to some business stress. My father's company had been navigating some complex deals, and tension often spilled over into family interactions. Still, something felt different this time. more deliberate, more focused on me. The Anderson family legacy was everything to my parents. The business my grandfather started from nothing had grown into a real estate empire under my father's leadership. Family portraits spanning 3 generations lined our hallway, a visual reminder of the expectations placed on each of us. Legacy, reputation, success. These weren't just words in our household. They were commandments. An Anderson never shows weakness, my father would say. An Anderson always presents their best face to the world, my mother would add. An Anderson puts family interests above personal desires, they would say in unison. I thought I understood what those mantras meant. I believed that despite choosing my own path, I was still honoring the family in my own way. I was still an Anderson, still contributing to the legacy through hard work and integrity. How wrong I was. How completely I misunderstood my place in their world. The perfect family facade was about to crumble, revealing the cold reality underneath. And I was about to discover just how conditional family love could be. The Anderson family mansion stood imposing against the sunset as I pulled into the circular driveway that Sunday evening. The property had always intimidated me, even though I'd spent most of my adolescence there after we moved from our more modest home when I was 10. 6 bedrooms, 8 bathrooms, a 3-car garage, and manicured grounds that required a full-time landscaper. It wasn't just a house, it was a statement. I straightened my tie before ringing the doorbell. Sunday dinners were formal affairs, another of my mother's unshakable traditions. The housekeeper, Louisa, opened the door with her usual warm smile, though I noticed a flicker of something else in her eyes. Sadness? Pity? She quickly looked away. "They're in the dining room, Mr. Brandt," she said softly. "Dinner is already served." That was unusual. Family dinner always began precisely at 6:30, and it was only 6:15. My punctuality was another trait I'd developed in this household, where being late was considered disrespectful. The change in routine sent another warning signal. When I entered the dining room, the tension was thick enough to cut with one of the expensive steak knives laid out on the table. My father sat at the head, as always, studying some documents rather than acknowledging my arrival. My mother perched stiffly to his right, her posture perfect as she sipped white wine. Madison sat beside her, and I immediately noticed the smug expression she wore, barely concealed behind her water glass. Tyler slouched across from them, his attention fixed on his plate. He was the only one who looked uncomfortable with whatever was happening. "You're early, Brandt," my father finally said without looking up. "Sit down." "No, hello." "No, how are you?" "Definitely no congratulations on the promotion." I took my usual seat beside Tyler, who shifted slightly away from me. The meal progressed in uncomfortable silence, interrupted only by the clink of silverware and terse requests to pass dishes. No one mentioned my promotion. No one asked about my week. The normal superficial family chat was conspicuously absent. After the main course, as Louisa cleared plates, my father finally set aside his documents and looked directly at me for the first time that evening. "We need to discuss some changes in the family business structure," he announced. His tone was the same one he used in board meetings before firing someone. I'd heard it once when I interned at his company during a college summer. "I've been restructuring the Anderson Holdings portfolio to streamline operations," he continued. "The board and I have made some difficult decisions for the future of the company." My mother nodded along, her face a mask of supportive devotion. Madison's smirk grew more pronounced. "As part of this restructuring," my father said, folding his hands on the table, "we've determined that certain elements need to be excised from the family business." The way he said excised, like cutting out a tumor, made my stomach clench. "I don't understand," I said. "What does this have to do with me? I don't even work for Anderson Holdings." "That's precisely the point," Madison interjected. "You've never contributed to the family business, yet you've benefited from the Anderson name your entire life." My father held up a hand to silence her, though his expression showed approval of her words. "The fact is, Brandt, we've carried you long enough. Your grandfather passed away 3 months ago, and certain matters have come to light that require us to make a clean break." Grandfather's death had been difficult for everyone. He was the family patriarch, the founder of everything the Andersons had. I'd been close to him in a way I never was with my father. He appreciated my precision, my integrity. He'd supported my decision to pursue accounting, even when my parents didn't. "What are you talking about?" I asked, genuine confusion in my voice. "Carried me? I've been financially independent since college. I haven't taken a dime from the family." Don't be obtuse, my mother cut in. The connections, the introductions, the Anderson name on your resume. You think you achieved anything on your own? Her words stung like a physical slap. I had worked incredibly hard, often putting in 80-hour weeks to prove myself on merit alone. Effective immediately, my father continued as if I hadn't spoken. You are removed from the family trust, all company holdings, and future inheritance considerations. The room seemed to tilt sideways. What? Why? Furthermore, he continued, sliding a document toward me. We need you to sign this, relinquishing any claims on family assets. I didn't reach for the paper. This doesn't make any sense. What's really going on here? That's when my father's composure cracked slightly, a flash of anger breaking through his businessman veneer. What's going on is that you're out, Brant. Leave the key and don't come back. My mother's cold stare bore into me as she nodded. This house was never yours. You were just a temporary occupant. I looked around the table in shock, my gaze landing on Madison, who reached beside her chair and lifted up a suitcase. My suitcase, already packed. We took the liberty of gathering your essential items, she said, her voice dripping with false concern. The rest will be donated. They had planned this entire evening. While I was at work, proud of my promotion and planning to share my success, they were packing my belongings and preparing to erase me from the family. You can't be serious, I said, looking desperately at each of them. Mom? Dad? What did I do? It's what you didn't do, my father replied coldly. You didn't earn your place. You chose to abandon the family business. You've proven yourself unworthy of the Anderson name. I turned to Tyler, hoping my younger brother might show some sign of support, or at least explanation. He met my eyes briefly, discomfort evident in his expression, but quickly looked away when our mother cleared her throat. Sign the papers, take your things, and go, my father said. My lawyer will contact you about formalizing the separation. I stood up slowly, my legs unsteady beneath me. You're cutting me off completely? Over what? Because I became an accountant instead of working for you. This discussion is over, my father said, standing as well. You have 5 minutes to collect any personal items from your old room and leave. The security code will be changed tonight. My mother didn't even look at me as she dabbed her lips with an embroidered napkin. Madison held out the suitcase with a triumphant gleam in her eyes. Tyler stared at his plate, shoulders hunched. In a daze, I took the suitcase. It was surprisingly light for something meant to contain the remnants of my life in this house. I didn't sign the papers. I couldn't process what they were asking, what was happening. You'll regret not signing, my father called after me as I walked woodenly toward the stairs. It would have been easier for everyone. I mechanically went to my old room, the space I'd lived in through high school, and occasionally used when visiting. It was already transformed. My books were gone. The shelves held decorative items that belonged to my mother. The closet was empty except for a few hangers. The desk where I'd studied for countless exams was now a vanity table. They hadn't just packed my things, they'd erased me. I walked out the front door 5 minutes later without saying another word. No one came to see me off. No explanation was given. No real goodbye. In my car, I sat gripping the steering wheel, too shocked to cry, too confused to be angry yet. My phone buzzed with a text from Carlos, my best friend since college. How was dinner? Did they finally acknowledge the promotion? I stared at the message, then typed back with shaking fingers. Can I stay at your place tonight? I'll explain when I get there. As I drove away from the house I'd called home for 18 years, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The porch light went out. The perfect family portrait was being reframed without me in it, and I had no idea why. Carlos's concerned face greeted me at the door of his downtown apartment. One look at me wheeling a single suitcase, my expression hollow, and he knew something was seriously wrong. Dude, what happened? He asked, stepping aside to let me in. The words caught in my throat. How do you tell someone that your family just discarded you? That the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally had coldly cut you from their lives? They kicked me out, I finally managed. My family, they just removed me. Carlos guided me to his couch and grabbed 2 beers from the fridge. I recounted the bizarre dinner, the packed suitcase, the transformed bedroom. With each detail, his expression grew more incredulous. That's insane, he said when I finished. They can't just disown you for having a different career. Apparently they can, I replied. the reality of my situation beginning to sink in, and they did. That first night, sleep was impossible. I tossed on Carlos's sofa, replaying every moment of the dinner, searching for clues I might have missed. What had changed? Why now? The questions circled endlessly, keeping me awake until the early morning light filtered through the blinds. When my alarm went off at 6, I had maybe 30 minutes of restless sleep behind me. I had to go to work. Promotion week, important transitions, client meetings. The ordinary world continued spinning while mine had shattered. I called my mother first, hoping that a night's reflection might have softened her stance. The call went straight to voicemail. Same with my father's cell. I texted Tyler. "Please tell me what's going on." No response. I even tried Madison, though I expected nothing from her. I was right. By lunchtime, I noticed something else. The family photos on my parents' social media accounts were being edited or replaced. Weekend sailing trip from last summer? The new version showed just the four of them, my image clumsily cropped out. Tyler's graduation dinner? A new angle that conveniently excluded me from the frame. It wasn't just physical removal from the house, it was digital erasure as well. I went through the motions at work that week, somehow managing to lead meetings and review files while functioning on autopilot. My new team attributed my distraction to the pressure of the promotion. My boss commented that I seemed tired but expressed confidence in my abilities. If only they knew I was living out of a suitcase, showering in my friend's bathroom, and sleeping on a couch too short for my 6-foot frame. By the weekend, I knew I needed to find my own place. Carlos was gracious, but his one-bedroom apartment wasn't meant for 2 adults. I found a small studio 15 minutes from the office. The security deposit nearly wiped out my savings, but at least it was mine. "You can stay as long as you need," Carlos insisted when I told him about the apartment. "I need to start rebuilding," I replied. "But thank you, seriously." The studio was bare bones, white walls, laminate countertops, a bathroom so small I could brush my teeth while showering, but it wasn't charity. It was the first space that was truly mine. At work, I buried myself in projects, staying late every night. The office became a refuge from the emptiness of my new apartment and the unanswered questions about my family. Colleagues noticed the change in my behavior, the dark circles under my eyes, the weight dropping from my already lean frame. "Everything okay at home, Brant?" my boss asked after I spent a 3rd consecutive weekend at the office. Home. The word felt foreign now. "Just dedicated to making this promotion count," I answered with a forced smile. 2 weeks after the dinner, I drove to my parents' house, determined to at least retrieve more of my belongings. The gate code had been changed. As threatened, I pressed the intercom button and waited. No response. I tried again. Nothing. I called the house phone from outside the gate. It rang and rang. I knew someone was home. Both my parents' cars were in the driveway. After 10 minutes of trying, I left. Whatever possessions remained inside weren't worth the humiliation. Old friends from the neighborhood stopped returning my calls. Country club acquaintances crossed to the other side of the street when they saw me coming. The Anderson family circle was closing ranks, and the message was clear. I was an outsider now. Depression settled in like an unwanted roommate in my small studio. I'd wake up at 3 in the morning, heart racing, replaying my father's words, unworthy of the Anderson name. I'd spend hours analyzing my childhood, wondering if there were signs I'd missed. Had they always been planning to discard me? Was there something specific I'd done? The first holiday after the expulsion was Thanksgiving. Carlos invited me to join his family, but I couldn't face the well-meaning questions from strangers about my own family. Instead, I volunteered at a downtown shelter, serving meals to people who understood what it meant to be alone. It was the first Thanksgiving in 28 years without the formal Anderson dinner, without my mother's cranberry relish or my grandfather's traditional toast. Strangely, amid the plastic tables and paper plates, I felt more authentic connection with the shelter volunteers than I'd experienced in years of family gatherings. No pretense, no performance. Just people, showing up for each other. Small victories kept me going. Decorating my studio with secondhand furniture that I chose, not my mother. Cooking meals for myself, discovering I actually enjoyed the process when it wasn't laden with criticism. Building a routine that was entirely mine. Carlos remained steadfast, checking in regularly, dragging me out for beers when the isolation became too much. He never treated me with the pity others did when they heard fragments of my story. He just offered presence and normalcy when both were in short supply. "You know what I think?" he said one night. 3 months after the dinner, "I think they did you a favor." I nearly choked on my drink. "Some favor?" "No, hear me out," he continued. "You were always tiptoeing around them, trying to please people who couldn't be pleased. Now you get to just be Brant, not Brant Anderson, family disappointment." His words struck a chord. There was truth there, though the wound was still too fresh to fully embrace it. I had spent decades contorting myself to fit into a family that perhaps never really had space for me. As winter gave way to spring, I established a new normal. The panic attacks became less frequent. I could go days without checking my family's social media accounts. I threw myself into volunteer work, finding purpose in helping others who had also lost their support systems. I was surviving. Not thriving yet, but surviving. And sometimes that's victory enough. Then came the call that would change everything. It was a Tuesday morning in March, exactly 3 months and 4 days after the Sunday dinner, that had shattered my world. I was reviewing quarterly projections when my assistant buzzed through. "Brant, there's a Mrs. Jenkins from Eastwood National Bank on line 2, says it's urgent." I frowned. Eastwood National was one of the most prestigious private banks in the city, catering exclusively to high-net-worth clients. I had no accounts there, no business relationship of any kind. "This is Brant Anderson," I said, picking up the call. "Mr. Anderson, thank you for taking my call," a crisp, professional female voice responded. "I'm Victoria Jenkins, Senior Vice President of Private Banking at Eastwood National. We need to schedule an in-person meeting regarding some substantial family holdings that require your immediate attention." My heart rate quickened. Family holdings? Was this something to do with my parents? "I think there might be some confusion," I replied carefully. "I don't have any accounts with Eastwood National." "There's no confusion, Mr. Anderson," she said with quiet confidence. "This concerns your grandfather Theodore Anderson's estate and a trust in your name. We've been attempting to reach you through your family's contact information, but our calls have not been returned. It's rather urgent that we meet." My grandfather. The pieces started shifting in my mind, forming a pattern I couldn't quite make out yet. He had passed away 3 months before the family dinner. The timing couldn't be coincidental. "I can come today after work," I offered. "Around 6? "Perfect. I'll stay late to accommodate you. Our main branch downtown, top floor. Just give your name at security." The rest of the workday passed in a blur of distraction. What could this possibly be about? My grandfather had been wealthy, certainly, but his assets would naturally flow to his only son, my father. That was always the understanding. At 5:45, I stood in the marble lobby of Eastwood National Bank. The security guard checked my ID, made a call, and then personally escorted me to a private elevator. "Mrs. Jenkins is expecting you, sir," he said as the doors closed. The executive floor of the bank was hushed, all dark wood and subtle lighting. A receptionist led me to a corner office with a view of the city skyline. Mrs. Jenkins rose from behind an imposing desk. She was in her 50s, impeccably dressed, with the confident demeanor of someone who regularly handled vast sums of money. "Mr. Anderson, thank you for coming on such short notice," she said, gesturing to a leather chair across from her desk. "Can I offer you coffee? Water?" "Water would be great," I replied, my throat suddenly dry. "And please, call me Brant." Once we were settled, she opened a thick folder on her desk. "Brant, I'll be direct. Your grandfather, Theodore Anderson, established a separate trust with our bank 20 years ago. You are named as the sole beneficiary." I blinked, trying to process her words. "A separate trust? Separate from what?" "Separate from the main Anderson family trust," she clarified. "This was set up privately, with specific instructions that it remained confidential until his passing. The trust contains approximately $42 million in liquid assets, plus controlling interests in several Anderson Holdings subsidiaries." The room seemed to tilt. $42 million? And controlling interests? She nodded. "Yes. Your grandfather structured it very specifically. These aren't minority stakes. They're controlling shares in key Anderson properties, including the original commercial buildings that formed the foundation of the company." My mind raced. This made no sense. Or rather, it was beginning to make too much sense. When exactly was my grandfather's will executed? I asked. The day after his funeral, she replied. Which is why I find it strange that you weren't informed immediately. As executor of this portion of the estate, I sent formal notification to your family home. She frowned slightly. Your father acknowledged receipt personally. There it was, the missing piece. My father had known about this trust immediately after the funeral. He had known for 3 months before the Sunday dinner. There's more, Mrs. Jenkins continued, pulling an envelope from the folder. Your grandfather left this letter for you. With slightly trembling hands, I accepted the envelope. Inside was a single page of my grandfather's distinctive handwriting. Dear Brant, if you're reading this, I've moved on to whatever comes next. Don't waste time mourning an old man who lived a full life. I've watched you grow from a thoughtful boy into a man of integrity. While Richard focused on Madison's ambition and Eleanor doted on Tyler's charm, they missed the quiet strength you possess. I didn't. You chose your own path against considerable pressure. You built your career on merit, not nepotism. You maintained your principles when compromise would have been easier. The true Anderson legacy isn't about buildings or bank accounts. It's about character. You have it. Your father lost sight of it years ago. This trust gives you control not because you're my grandson, but because you've earned it. Use it wisely. Build something that matters. With pride, Grandfather Theodore. I read the letter twice, then looked up at Mrs. Jenkins, who was watching me with professional sympathy. There's something else you should know, she said, her tone shifting slightly. In the weeks following your grandfather's death, your father attempted to access this trust through various legal channels. When informed that he had no authority over these assets, he became difficult. Difficult how? He threatened litigation, claimed clerical errors, even suggested your grandfather had been mentally incompetent when establishing the trust. She straightened some papers. None of these claims had merit, particularly as the trust was reviewed and reconfirmed by your grandfather annually, including 2 months before his death. Another puzzle piece clicked into place. The papers my father had tried to make me sign at dinner. They must have been an attempt to transfer the trust assets to him. Mrs. Jenkins, have there been any unusual financial movements within Anderson Holdings recently? I asked. She hesitated, professionalism warring with concern. That would normally be confidential, but as you now hold controlling interest, she pulled out another document. There have been several large cash transfers from the main corporate accounts to offshore entities in the past 2 months. Our compliance department flagged them as unusual. The final piece fell into place. My father needed cash. He'd discovered he couldn't access my grandfather's millions. He'd tried to get me to sign them away. When I left without signing, he'd resorted to moving corporate funds instead. Mr. Anderson, Brant, Mrs. Jenkins said gently, given these circumstances, the bank has concerns about potential financial impropriety. As the controlling shareholder of these companies, you may want to consider a thorough audit. I nodded slowly, the shock giving way to a strange clarity. My family hadn't rejected me because I was unworthy. They'd cut me off because I was the obstacle between them and the money they desperately wanted. What do I need to do to formally accept this inheritance? I asked. Sign these documents, she said, sliding a folder toward me. Unlike the papers your father wanted you to sign, these grant you access rather than relinquishing it. As I signed my name, I felt a strange mixture of vindication and lingering hurt. My grandfather had seen me clearly, had valued my choices, but the family I'd grown up with had been willing to discard me for money. The weight of $42 million and corporate control should have felt heavy, but instead it felt like freedom. For the first time in months, I could see a path forward. Thank you for your persistence in finding me, Mrs. Jenkins, I said as we concluded the meeting. Just doing my job, she replied with a small smile. Though I must admit, it's satisfying to see your grandfather's wishes fulfilled. He spoke very highly of you. As I rode the elevator down to the lobby, my phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. I opened it to find a news alert someone had sent me. SEC launches investigation into Anderson Holdings' financial discrepancies. The game was changing, and for once, I wasn't just a pawn on the board. The morning after my meeting at Eastwood National, I woke to find 3 missed calls from Madison. No voicemails, just calls at 11:30 at night, midnight, and 2 in the morning. My father had called twice as well. After 3 months of silence, the sudden urgency was telling. I didn't call back immediately. Instead, I contacted Mrs. Jenkins and arranged for a forensic accounting team to begin reviewing the Anderson Holdings financial records. As controlling shareholder of key subsidiaries, I had both the right and responsibility to ensure everything was above board. What they found was staggering. For the past 5 years, my father had been systematically embezzling from the company, creating elaborate false transactions to hide the money trail. The legitimate business was still profitable, but millions had been siphoned to personal accounts and questionable investments. The recent large transfers that had caught the bank's attention were just the latest and most desperate attempts to cover growing cash flow problems. The SEC investigation, I learned, had been triggered by an anonymous tip from someone inside the company. Someone had provided detailed documentation of financial irregularities dating back years. The timing suggested the whistleblower acted shortly after my grandfather's death, perhaps freed from loyalty by his passing. 3 days after my bank meeting, Madison finally left a voicemail. "Brant, this is ridiculous. Call me back immediately. The SEC is crawling all over the offices because of some accounting nonsense. We need to present a united family front. This is affecting the stock price." No apology. No acknowledgement of the dinner or the 3 months of silence, just a demand for help when she needed it. I was reviewing the forensic accountant's preliminary report when my phone rang again. This time, it was a number I didn't recognize. "Mr. Anderson? This is Special Agent Davis with the Securities and Exchange Commission. We'd like to speak with you regarding Anderson Holdings' financial practices." My stomach tightened. I'm not employed by Anderson Holdings. We understand that. But as the controlling shareholder of several key subsidiaries, as named in Theodore Anderson's will, you may have information relevant to our investigation. Word traveled fast in financial circles. They already knew about my inheritance. "Of course," I replied. "I want to cooperate fully." The meeting with the SEC investigators was scheduled for the next day. That evening, my mother called. It was the first time I'd heard her voice in over 3 months. "Brant," she said, her tone formal and cold. "This situation with the SEC is getting out of hand. You need to fix this for the family name. No hello. No how are you. Just another demand." "Fix what exactly?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Don't be obtuse. These ridiculous allegations. Your father built this company from nothing. He deserves your loyalty." I almost laughed at the audacity. Loyalty? Like the kind you showed me when you packed my things and told me the house was never mine? A pause. "That was a family matter. This is business." "It's all connected, Mother. And from what I understand, Father didn't build the company from nothing. Grandfather did. Father just expanded it and apparently used it as his personal piggy bank." "You don't understand how these things work," she snapped. "Sometimes business requires creative financing. The SEC is making a mountain out of a molehill." "Then there's nothing to worry about," I replied evenly. "The truth will come out in the investigation. Be very careful about the choices you make now," she said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Your father still has many friends in high places." After she hung up, I sat in my studio apartment, turning over her words. Threats now. They had moved from rejection to threats in the span of a single phone call. The next day, I met with the SEC investigators. I provided everything I knew, which wasn't much about the day-to-day operations. I had never worked for the company, after all. But I authorized full access to the records of the subsidiaries I now controlled and committed to continuing the forensic audit. That evening, the story broke in the financial press. Anderson Holdings. Under federal investigation. Allegations of massive fraud. My phone exploded with notifications. Madison called 7 times in 30 minutes. My father's lawyer left an urgent message requesting a meeting. Extended family members I barely knew suddenly wanted to reconnect. The most surprising call came from my cousin Parker, who worked in the legal department at Anderson Holdings. "Brant, I need to meet with you. Not at the office. Somewhere private." We arranged to meet at a quiet bar across town. Parker arrived looking exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes and his normally immaculate suit wrinkled. "I've been reviewing internal documents for the SEC," he said after ordering a double scotch. "It's worse than they're saying publicly, much worse." "How bad?" I asked. "Your father has been falsifying records for years, using company funds for personal expenses, fabricating projects to justify cash movements. He took a long swallow of his drink. But that's not all. He's been pressuring employees to lie, to backdate documents, to create false records. And my mother? Parker grimaced, fully aware. She's been using the company credit cards for personal shopping for years, disguising it as client entertainment or office furnishings. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. I wasn't surprised, but the confirmation still stung. There's more, Parker continued, lowering his voice. Your father knew about your grandfather's trust the day after the funeral. He tried to challenge it legally but was shut down. That's when things got desperate. The offshore transfers, the frantic covering of tracks. And the family dinner? My expulsion? Parker nodded grimly. He needed you to sign over your rights to the trust. When you left without signing, he went ballistic. I overheard him telling Madison that you'd regret your stubbornness. The pieces were fully assembled now. The perfect family image, the Anderson legacy, had all been built on fraud and deception. My parents hadn't just been cold, they'd been corrupt. 2 days later, Madison showed up at my office unannounced. She looked nothing like the smug sister who had handed me my packed suitcase. Her hair was pulled back severely, her designer outfit replaced by a simple blouse and slacks. This is your fault, she said the moment my assistant closed the door. The stock has dropped 60%. Clients are abandoning ship. Father might be indicted. My fault? I repeated. I didn't falsify financial records or embezzle from the company. You triggered this investigation. You're destroying everything our family built. I didn't trigger anything, Madison. The SEC received their tip months ago, before I even knew about grandfather's trust. I studied her closely. Unless you think I'm the anonymous whistleblower, which would be quite a feat considering I had no access to company records. She deflated slightly, sinking into a chair. This can't be happening. Everything we worked for, everything Father stole, you mean? Her eyes flashed. You never understood how business works. I'm an accountant, Madison. I understand exactly how business works, including which practices are illegal. For the first time, I saw fear break through her arrogant facade. What's going to happen? That depends on how extensive the fraud is and who participated. I leaned forward. Did you know? Were you involved? She looked away. I signed some documents Father asked me to. I didn't ask questions. You might want to get your own lawyer, I advised. One not connected to Father. After Madison left, I received a text from Tyler, the first communication from my younger brother since the dinner. Can we meet? Please, just us. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop near my apartment the next morning. Tyler arrived looking like he'd aged years in months. The carefree younger brother had been replaced by someone anxious and subdued. I didn't know, he blurted the moment he sat down, about any of it. The fraud, grandfather's trust, the plan to cut you off. I swear, Brant, I believed him. Tyler had never been included in the business side of family matters. That Sunday dinner, he continued, they just told me you had decided to separate from the family, that you wanted to break ties. I knew something felt wrong, but he trailed off, shame evident on his face. But you didn't speak up, I finished for him. He nodded miserably. I was a coward. By the time I realized what had really happened, they had convinced everyone you had betrayed the family somehow. And now? Now everything's falling apart. Father hardly leaves his study. Mother is planning trips to visit friends overseas. Madison is in panic mode. He looked up at me, his eyes pleading. I'm sorry, Brant. I should have called you months ago. It was the first genuine apology from anyone in my family. The sincerity of it cracked something open inside me. I appreciate that, Tyler. What are you going to do? He asked. About the investigation? It was the question I had been wrestling with since the SEC called. Did family loyalty demand I try to protect my father, despite everything? Or did integrity require full cooperation with the authorities? I'm going to tell the truth, I said finally. That's all I can do. As the investigation proceeded, more details emerged. My father had been using company funds to maintain a lavish lifestyle beyond even what their substantial legitimate income could support. Multiple properties, private jets, art collections, all purchased with misappropriated funds. The hardest decision came when the SEC investigators asked me to provide testimony that could be used in a criminal case against my father. After sleepless nights considering all angles, I agreed. Not out of revenge, but out of respect for the truth and for my grandfather's legacy. The day the news broke about criminal charges being filed, I received a call from my father's personal line. "You could have stopped this," he said without preamble. "One word from you about confidence in the company leadership, and the prosecutors would have settled for fines." "That would have been a lie," I replied. "And there have been enough lies in this family." A long pause. Then, "You never understood what it takes to build something meaningful in this world." "Maybe not," I conceded. "But I understand what it means to live with integrity. Grandfather taught me that." The line went dead. It was the last conversation I would have with my father as a free man. A week later, he was arrested on multiple fraud charges. The image of Richard Anderson in handcuffs splashed across the business section of every major newspaper. As the family business imploded under the weight of scandal and investigation, I faced a moral crossroads that would define the next chapter of my life. The empire built on deception was crumbling, but perhaps something authentic could rise from the ruins. 6 months after learning about my grandfather's trust, I stood in the empty conference room of what had once been the crown jewel of Anderson Holdings. The expansive views of the city skyline remained impressive, but the energy of the space had changed. Gone were the intimidating portraits of past Anderson patriarchs. Gone was the oppressive dark wood and leather that my father had favored. In their place, glass and light, transparency in both design and intention. With the guidance of financial advisors and an ethical business consultant, I had used a portion of my inheritance to establish Integrity Capital, an investment firm focused on supporting businesses with strong ethical foundations. Our mission statement, framed on the wall where my grandfather's portrait once hung, was simple: building value through values. The irony wasn't lost on me. The name Anderson had once opened doors throughout the business world. Now it was associated with one of the biggest corporate fraud cases in the state's history. But instead of hiding from the connection, I embraced it. Every interview, every client meeting began with acknowledgement of the past and a commitment to a different future. We learn from history, I would say, or we're doomed to repeat it. In the wake of Anderson Holdings' collapse, hundreds of employees faced uncertain futures. Many were innocent participants in my father's schemes, people who had mortgages to pay and families to support. One of my first actions with Integrity Capital was to hire as many of these employees as possible, focusing on those with specialized skills and clean records. "Why would you help us?" asked Janet, a former financial analyst from Anderson Holdings, during her interview. "After what your family did to you?" "You're not my family," I replied simply. "You're talented professionals who deserve a fresh start." Building a new company from the ashes of scandal wasn't easy. Some potential clients wanted nothing to do with anyone bearing the Anderson name. Others were morbidly curious, more interested in gossip about my father's case than in legitimate business opportunities. Finding the right partners required patience and perseverance. 4 months into the new venture, as we began to gain traction with our first major clients, I received a call I never expected. "Mr. Anderson? This is the warden at Federal Correctional Institution, Oakdale. Your father has requested a meeting." My father, once the epitome of business success in our community, was now serving a 15-year sentence for securities fraud, embezzlement, and tax evasion. The trial had been swift and devastating, with former colleagues and business partners lining up to testify against him once the extent of his deception became clear. I agreed to the visit, not out of family obligation but from a need for closure. The prison visiting room was a stark contrast to the luxurious environments where I had previously encountered my father. His designer suits replaced by khaki prison garb, his commanding presence diminished by institutional surroundings. "You look well," he said as I sat across from him, a plastic table between us. "I am well," I replied neutrally. "I hear you've started your own firm." His tone was difficult to read, somewhere between accusation and grudging respect. "Yes. Integrity Capital." A flicker of something crossed his face. Subtle. Not trying to be subtle, just honest. He leaned forward slightly. "I've had time to think in here, about mistakes made." For a moment, I thought perhaps prison had genuinely changed him, that this might be the beginning of a real apology. "The biggest mistake was underestimating you," he continued. "I should have found a way to bring you into the fold, to control the situation better. Your grandfather always said you were smart. I should have listened." And there it was. Not remorse for his actions, but regret that his manipulation had failed. That's what you took from all this? I asked. That you should have been more effective at corrupting me, too? He sat back, studying me with cold calculation. Family is about loyalty, Brant, something you never understood. No, Father. Family is about love. Loyalty follows love, not the other way around. His expression hardened. I need your help. My appeals process. No, I cut him off. I didn't come here to discuss legal strategies. I came to say goodbye. Dramatic as always, he scoffed. You can't just cut off your family. The irony of his statement hung in the air between us. I'm not cutting off family, I replied, standing to leave. I'm choosing what family means to me now. That visit provided the closure I needed. I walked out of the prison with a lightness I hadn't expected. The weight of seeking paternal approval finally lifted from my shoulders. 2 weeks later, my mother reached out through her lawyer. The family assets had been frozen during the investigation. The mansion was in foreclosure. Her social standing had evaporated overnight. She was, for the first time in her adult life, facing financial insecurity. Mrs. Anderson would like to discuss her situation, the lawyer said delicately. She believes that as family, you might be in a position to assist. I'll meet with her, I agreed. But I make no promises. We met at a quiet restaurant downtown. My mother had always been meticulous about her appearance, and even in reduced circumstances, she maintained that standard. But there was a brittleness to her now, a fragility that had never been there before. The country club revoked my membership, she said after ordering a glass of wine. 30 years, and they sent a form letter. I said nothing, waiting for her to continue. Your father assured me everything was perfectly legal, she went on. I never questioned the details. But you enjoyed the benefits, I noted. She didn't deny it. I filed for divorce. The lawyers think it might help protect what assets remain. Again, no remorse for the fraud, just strategic planning to minimize consequences. What do you want from me, Mother? She set down her wine glass carefully. I need somewhere to live, an allowance until the divorce settlement, perhaps a position at your new company, something suitable for someone with my social connections. And why would I do that? Because despite everything, I'm still your mother. I studied her face, looking for any sign of the maternal love that should accompany such a statement. I found none. I'll help you find an apartment, I said finally, a modest one, and provide a basic living stipend. But there will be no position at my company, and the support is conditional on you seeking therapy. Therapy? She repeated, as if I'd suggested she take up exotic dancing. Yes, to understand your role in all this, to build a healthier relationship with your children and with yourself. She didn't like it, but with few options remaining, she eventually agreed. Our relationship remained distant but cordial, defined by clear boundaries rather than obligation. Madison's fall from grace was perhaps the most dramatic. As vice president of operations at Anderson Holdings, she had been more directly involved in the fraudulent activities than anyone except my father. While she avoided criminal charges through a cooperation agreement with prosecutors, her professional reputation was in tatters. 6 months after the company's collapse, she appeared at my office, requesting a meeting. Gone was the designer wardrobe and imperious attitude. This Madison was subdued, humbled by circumstance. I need a job, she said bluntly after declining coffee. No one will hire me with the Anderson scandal attached to my resume. And you think I will? I asked. You're building something new, something with integrity, from what I hear. She met my gaze directly. I made terrible choices, following Father's lead without question. But I'm good at what I do when I'm not being directed to commit fraud. Her honesty was refreshing, if belated. If I were to consider this, I said carefully, there would be conditions. Strict ones. Name them. You start at entry level, no special treatment. You report to department heads like any other employee. You participate in our ethics training program. And, most importantly, you acknowledge your past actions openly with the team. She flinched at the last condition but nodded. I can do that. Why should I believe you? I asked. After everything? Madison looked down at her hands, then back up at me. Because I have nothing left to hide behind. The money's gone. The prestige is gone. The family name is toxic. All I have left is the chance to rebuild with honesty. I hired her the following week. Our relationship remained strictly professional, but over time, a tentative respect began to replace the lifelong antagonism. Tyler's journey was different. The baby of the family, He had been more shielded from the business operations and thus less implicated in the scandal. After our coffee shop reconciliation, he had made consistent efforts to rebuild our relationship, calling regularly and offering genuine support as I navigated the aftermath. When he graduated from college that spring, I attended the ceremony. Afterward, he surprised me with his plans. "I want to work with you," he said over celebration dinner. "Not because we're brothers, but because what you're building matters. I've been researching ethical business models for my senior thesis. I have ideas." Unlike with Madison, I had no reservations about Tyler's sincerity. He had been manipulated by our parents as much as I had, just in different ways. "We'll start you in the research department," I told him. "You'll need to earn your way up." He grinned. Wouldn't have it any other way. Working with Tyler helped heal some of the family wounds. He brought energy and fresh perspectives to the company, challenging me when needed and supporting me consistently. We began building a genuine brotherhood, free from the toxic dynamics of our childhood. 6 months after establishing Integrity Capital, an unexpected opportunity arose. The Anderson family mansion, our childhood home, was being auctioned to satisfy creditors. The prospect of returning to the site of so much manipulation and pain should have been unappealing. Yet something pulled me to the auction. "Are you sure about this?" Carlos asked as we toured the property before bidding began. "This place holds a lot of bad memories." The house stood empty, the expensive furnishings sold off, the family portraits removed. Without the trappings of Anderson wealth, it was just a structure, walls and floors and windows, space that could be redefined. "I'm not buying back the past," I explained. "I'm reclaiming the space." I purchased the mansion for significantly less than its pre-scandal value. Rather than moving back in, I donated it to a foundation supporting youth aging out of foster care, providing transitional housing and career training for young adults without family support. The irony was perfect. A house built on fraud and family rejection transformed into a home for those building new beginnings without family privilege. The Anderson name on the foundation plaque referred not to my father, but to my grandfather, whose ethical legacy I was determined to restore. As Integrity Capital grew, I found myself referring often to my grandfather's letter and the wisdom it contained. The true Anderson legacy isn't about buildings or bank accounts. It's about character. Those words became my North Star, guiding business decisions and personal choices alike. 1 year after the fateful Sunday dinner, I had rebuilt not just a career but an identity. Not Brant Anderson, disappointing son and family outcast, but Brant Anderson, man of integrity, architect of his own legacy. The journey had been painful beyond measure, but the destination was worth every step. On the 1-year anniversary of the Sunday dinner that had shattered my world, I stood in the office of Integrity Capital, watching the sunset paint the city skyline in shades of gold and purple. So much had changed in 12 months. The company had grown from a concept born of betrayal into a thriving reality with 37 employees and a growing client list. My small studio apartment had been replaced by a comfortable downtown loft. My identity as the rejected Anderson son had evolved into something stronger and more authentic. The journey from that devastating dinner to this moment of quiet reflection had been neither straight nor easy. There were nights when the pain still felt fresh, when dreams of family unity would wake me with an ache of longing. There were moments when anger threatened to consume me, when the temptation to become bitter seemed overwhelming. But with each challenge faced and each decision made, the healing had progressed. My father's legal troubles had concluded with a 14-year sentence, reduced from 15 after his cooperation with investigators implicated several business associates. The man who had once commanded respect throughout the city now shared a cell with another white-collar criminal. His appeals had been denied, his requests for leniency rejected by judges familiar with the extent of his fraud. I visited him once more after that initial prison meeting, bringing the documents he had requested for his appeal. The conversation was brief and transactional. We both understood that while biology made us father and son, the bonds of trust that define true family had been irreparably broken. There was no hatred in this recognition, just a calm acceptance of reality. I wished him well as I left, and meant it. Holding on to resentment would only continue to give him power over my life. Sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do is maintain boundaries, my therapist had said during one of our weekly sessions. Forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation. Those words had helped me navigate the complex emotions surrounding my family relationships. Forgiveness wasn't about excusing their actions or pretending the hurt never happened. It was about freeing myself from the weight of resentment so I could move forward unburdened. My relationship with Tyler had grown into something I never experienced with any family member before. Without our parents' manipulative influence, we discovered a genuine connection based on mutual respect rather than obligation. He had proven himself at Integrity Capital, earning the trust of colleagues through hard work rather than family connection. We had weekly dinners, sometimes talking business but more often sharing stories, opinions, and the kind of brotherly banter that had been impossible in our childhood home. "I never really knew you growing up," Tyler confessed during one such dinner. "Everything was filtered through Mom and Dad's perspectives. It's like I'm getting to know my brother for the first time at 23. Madison's path had been more complicated. Her initial humility upon joining the company had been genuine, but old habits proved difficult to break. When I caught her circumventing protocols to fast-track a project, we had a frank conversation about trust and second chances. "This isn't Anderson Holdings," I told her firmly. "Cutting corners isn't just discouraged here. It's forbidden." "I was trying to impress you," she admitted, "to show I could deliver results." "Impress me with integrity, not just outcomes," I replied. "That's the only currency that matters at this company." To her credit, Madison took the correction seriously. Our relationship remained primarily professional, though occasional moments of genuine connection emerged. We would never be close, but we had achieved something resembling mutual respect, which seemed miracle enough given our history. My mother's journey surprised everyone. After initially resisting therapy, she eventually embraced it, confronting painful truths about her own upbringing and the patterns she had perpetuated. 6 months into regular sessions, she requested a meeting. "I need to apologize," she said as we sat in a quiet corner of a cafe near her modest new apartment. "Not just for the dinner, but for a lifetime of conditional love." It was the first time I had ever heard her acknowledge fault without qualification or deflection. "I was raised to believe that appearance and achievement were everything," she continued. "I never questioned whether that was the right way to raise children." "And now?" I asked. "Now I understand what I sacrificed on the altar of social standing." Her eyes, so like my own, held genuine regret. "I lost the opportunity to know my children as people rather than extensions of myself." The apology didn't instantly heal decades of emotional neglect, but it opened a door that had long been closed. We began a careful, tentative reconstruction of our relationship with clear boundaries and realistic expectations. Carlos remained my closest friend, eventually becoming Integrity Capital's chief operating officer. His unwavering support during my darkest days had cemented a bond that went beyond friendship into chosen family. "You know, when you showed up at my door with that suitcase, I never imagined we'd end up here," he said during the company's first anniversary celebration, "from couch surfing to corner offices." "Not bad, Anderson." The transformation of the family mansion into transitional housing for youth aging out of foster care became one of my most fulfilling projects. The formal dining room where I had been expelled from the family was now a communal kitchen where young adults learned culinary skills. My father's imposing study had become a computer lab offering technology training. My childhood bedroom housed a young man studying business administration at the local college. "This place feels different now," Carlos observed during a tour of the renovated space. "Like the bad energy has been cleared out." He was right. The mansion that had once been a monument to false appearances was now filled with authentic hope. Young people who had faced rejection and uncertainty were finding community and purpose within its walls. The painful memories associated with the house had been replaced by new ones of genuine connection. During the holiday season, I hosted a dinner at my loft for what I now considered my real family. Tyler, Carlos, a few close colleagues, and 3 graduates from the transitional housing program who had no place else to go. The conversation was lively, the laughter genuine. There were no power plays, no hidden agendas, no performances for social standing. To chosen family, Tyler toasted, raising his glass. And to second chances, the words resonated deeply. Family, I had learned, wasn't defined by shared DNA but by shared values. The people who stood by you at your lowest, who celebrated your victories without envy, who told you hard truths with compassion, these were your true family, regardless of biological connection. In my office, I kept my grandfather's letter framed on the wall, a daily reminder of the values that now guided my life. His faith in me had provided a foundation when everything else crumbled. I had established a scholarship in his name for business students focused on ethical leadership, ensuring his legacy of integrity would influence future generations. The most profound lesson of my journey wasn't about business success or financial independence, though I had achieved both. It was about the liberation that comes from building an identity based on personal integrity rather than external approval. For years, I had unconsciously sought validation from people incapable of providing it. The painful severance from my family had ultimately freed me to discover my own worth, separate from the Anderson name and expectations. Sometimes, I told a group of students during a guest lecture at the local university, what feels like rejection is actually redirection. The doors that close painfully often lead you to pathways you never would have discovered otherwise. As I concluded my reflection on that anniversary evening, watching the city lights begin to twinkle against the darkening sky, I held my grandfather's letter in my hand. "Build something that matters," he had written. I believed I was doing just that, not just a business, but a life of meaning and authentic connection. The house keys my father demanded back had opened doors I never expected. The suitcase my sister packed with such smug satisfaction had carried me to freedom I never anticipated. The family that erased me had inadvertently released me to create something more genuine than their carefully constructed facade had ever been. Have you ever experienced a moment when rejection turned into an unexpected blessing? Share your story in the comments below. Life's hardest challenges often contain our greatest opportunities for growth, and I'd love to hear how you've transformed pain into purpose. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that family is about love, not loyalty to toxic patterns. Thank you for joining me on this journey from betrayal to rebuilding. Remember, true homes aren't made of walls and rooms, but of genuine love and acceptance.